Arabia and Israel. We saw back on April 13th, when Israel was attacked directly by Iran for the first time, something unprecedented, and that was other countries coming to its active defense. And this showed in embryonic form what the future could be, a future in which Israel is integrated into the region, in which it enjoys normal relations with other countries, something it sought from day one of its existence, in which it's protected against the aggression coming from Iran or its proxies, and in which Iran and those proxies are isolated. That's very much possible in the future. But it requires resolving Gaza, ending the conflict there. It requires, as David said, a credible pathway for the Palestinians to a state of their own. And these are very hard issues. But that future is very powerful and very positive. The alternative is a perpetuation of conflict, a perpetuation of insecurity, and multiple fronts at the same time, not only in Gaza, but we see what's happening in the West Bank and growing insecurity there. We see what's happening in the north and the possibility of conflict with Hezbollah and even broader conflict with Iran. From day one, our purpose has been not only to make sure that Israel can effectively ensure that October 7th never happens again, but also that the conflict doesn't spread. And we're intent on that. But the longer all of this goes on, the greater the risks of just that happening. So I think for Israel, clearly for the Palestinian people, and especially Palestinians in Gaza, who desperately need this conflict to be over so that they can get the help that they need and begin to rebuild their lives. For every country in the region, the interest is clear. I can't speak to what's in the mind of Mr. Sinwar and where his interests lie. He will have to make those judgments for himself. But we remain resolute in working to bring the ceasefire over the line because it would open up so many more positive prospects. And let's see where we are in the coming days.
Could I just say, Patrick, that Tony's assessment that 90% of the deal is there is completely correct. And in the end, what you need are partners for peace. And that is now in the hands of Bibi Netanyahu and Sinwar to get us over the line and to take that deal that is on the table, and we've now been talking about that deal for weeks. It was important to go to the UAE, as it's important to speak to Arab partners across the region. And the focus of your question is on the day after. And clearly, it's on the security guarantees that are important for Israel to have. And Arab partners, and certainly the UAE, are showing some forward-leaning in their commitment to securing that. But what I think is absolutely essential, and they all say this, is that there has to be a pathway to two states. That has to be present, or they cannot give that commitment. And then there's also discussion of both the security in Gaza and the administration. And clearly we have to see a reformed and renewed Palestinian Authority, and there can be no role for Hamas going forward. So we're very focused on the day after, but let's remember that when we talk about the deal, it is a phased deal. Let us get over the line to get to that first phase, and let us see that pathway to security on both sides.
And Shane Tandon from AFP.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Foreign Secretary. Secretary Blinken, could I ask you about a couple of aspects of the Middle East? The Israel Defense Forces just a moment ago released an investigation, or released some preliminary findings into the death of an American citizen, Miss Eisenor Enyegi. Could you say, they said that she was killed most likely by Israeli fire, but unintentionally. Are you confident with that assessment? Does the United States want to see anything further? Are you confident with the assessment that this was unintentional? And what more do you want Israel to do? Could there be repercussions? For both of you, could I ask you about the International Criminal Court? It seems that in the coming days there could be a formal decision on whether to seek an arrest warrant for Prime Minister Netanyahu, among others. Mr. Foreign Secretary, the Labour government, of course, has taken a slightly different stance from your predecessors, from the Conservatives on this. Could you say what your position is, whether you support going ahead, and is there unity between the two allies on this? Thank you.
Sean, thank you very much. With regard to the tragic killing of Eisenor, I think what we saw of this investigation is it seems to show what eyewitnesses have said and made clear, that her killing was both unprovoked and unjustified. No one should be shot and killed for attending a protest. No one should have to put their life at risk just for freely expressing their views. In our judgment, Israeli security forces need to make some fundamental changes in the way that they operate in the West Bank, including changes to their rules of engagement. We've long seen reports of the security forces looking the other way when extremist settlers use violence against Palestinians. We've seen reports of excessive force by Israeli security forces against Palestinians. And now we have the second American citizen killed at the hands of Israeli security forces. It's not acceptable. It has to change. And we'll be making that clear to the senior-most members of the Israeli government. Now, we're looking carefully at the results of this investigation, but even on an initial read, and even accepting it at face value, it's clear that there are serious issues that need to be dealt with, and we will insist that they be dealt with.
I think the important thing to stress in great democracies such as ours is our belief in the separation of powers. There is an important forum for lawyers and the judiciary and our courts, and then there is also an important forum for politicians and those who represent the people. We've always been clear in the UK in our belief in the international rule of law, the rules-based order, and in IHL issues which are fundamentally important. And we took a decision last week in relation to arms exports that were quasi-legal on the basis of our law as they stand. We believe in international law, we believe in the Statute of Rome, but these must be decisions for the international courts to determine. I don't want to comment on the assessment that they will reach. I qualified as a lawyer in part because of the great Harvard Law School, but I'm going to leave it to the lawyers to determine these very complex matters.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.